Welcome to this extraordinary session of the Last Drop podcast. My name is Alex Taremwa. We are in Berlin. For those of you who are initiated, that's the capital city of Germany in Europe. It's 0 degrees, opening day of the Berlin Energy Transition Dialogue, and the Last Drop podcast is live. So today we have extraordinary sessions. I want to walk you through what's on schedule. We have the Kenyan President, His Excellency Dr. William Ruto, delivering a keynote address. Then we have some interesting sessions later with activists. But the one that's most important, especially for us in Africa, is a ministerial dialogue in which the Minister of Energy for Uganda, Dr. Ruth Nankabirwa, Sentamu, the Minister of Energy for Egypt, Senegal, Nigeria, and the African Development Bank President will be speaking. Dr. Ruto is expected to announce Kenya going renewable entirely 100% by 2030, and currently at 75%. If that sounds high, it's because it's actually true. Kenya has one of the biggest wind energy plants in Africa, heavy on solar, and of course hydro, as is Uganda. Most of our energy in Uganda is equally renewable. It's hydroelectricity, solar, and we have in many aspects tried to experiment with other forms of energy like thermal in Dororo, or the wind plant in Namanve, which I'm not sure works that well anymore, that will generate over 1,200 megawatts from the Owen Falls Dam, Karuma, Isimba, and other smaller dams that are scattered across the country. I had the chance to sit down with the Ugandan Energy Minister, Dr. Ruth Nankabirwa Sentamu, on the sidelines of this exciting conference. It's the biggest energy conference in the world, attended by world leaders, industry leaders, experts, academics, and media fellows like myself, come together to talk about the developments within the energy sector. This year we focus entirely on green energy. So people talk about green hydrogen. That's how you know some of your countries are behind, because the only green energy they have is solar and hydro, but people are already experimenting with green hydrogen. Some sects are now doing some areas of clean nuclear. If you're still doing solar, then you might be playing catch up. But for this particular podcast, let me let you in on my conversation with the minister, who was escorted by the Permanent Secretary for the Ministry of Energy, Irene Bateebe, and the Programs Director for the GIZ PrEP Energy and Climate Program, David Otieno. Let's dig in. What would you say was or is your biggest message to bring to this stage today, other than the punchline you've already delivered on the main stage?
Well, the biggest message is that we are partners, Africa and Europe, we are partners. But as partners, we need to open up and be genuine to one another. We've been hearing about climate change, money, carbon credit money. And to tell you the truth, African countries are looking around to get this money so that we can invest in the mini grids. I talk about mini grids because this is where we see very high tariffs. We want to invest in mini grids using affordable finances. But where is the money? 6% of the climate change finances go to Africa. But out of 6%, you may realize that 80% goes to South Africa. Africa is not comprised of South Africa. Who will think about Burundi? Who will think about Uganda? Who will think about South Sudan? So really, it is genuinity that we are looking at when we talk about partnering, Africa-Europe partnership. It's, those who have the technology should not be mean. They have to share with us in Africa. They have to transfer the technology. And then appreciation of what Africa has in terms of natural resources, so that Africa is helped to exploit responsibly these natural resources, to create funds, so that we can use these funds to invest in mini grids, and grid expansion is one thing that I brought out.
You raised a lot of dust with that comment, specifically about...
Not resolutions.
Yes.
We don't need resolutions to tell us don't do this, don't develop eco. All that does not add any value to our partnership. In fact, it injures the relationship. I get annoyed when I think about such resolutions. I get annoyed because that is not genuinity.
They've had these many years, you said, to develop and transition, and now they're telling us how we should do it.
Leapfrog. How do you tell us to leapfrog? Is the ground prepared for Africa to leapfrog? Can't we crash? How can we be helped so that we don't crash as we leapfrog? We need Europe's hand so that we leapfrog, land softly, and then leapfrog, and then land again, and then leapfrog.
While I was moving around, majority of the delegates from Europe were, oh, Africa, they like playing victim. They like to blame everyone else for their problems when they're not even investing in the cheapest forms of energy. What would be your response to
That's
such?
a lie, because first of all, we've put in place the required legislations and regulations. Talk about the national development plans for African countries. Talk about the energy strategies for African countries. But when it comes to finances, we get stuck. Okay? We get stuck. So Africa is ready. And by the way, Africa is not sleeping. We are moving a journey of industrialization and value addition. We are moving a journey of local content. In Uganda, we have what we call Buy Uganda, Build Uganda. Very soon you'll be seeing us manufacturing a lot of stuff that we use in electricity industry. Meters, transformers, batteries that we are going to use, because we now don't entertain exportation of unprocessed minerals. We have the mineral resources which we are going to exploit responsibly, and we will link up the mineral subsector to other sectors. Industry is going to be facilitated by our minerals. It is just time that we need. Africa needs just a little bit of time. We've learned a lesson. We are no longer lamenting. We are seriously exploiting our natural resources responsibly. Many countries have come up with oil discovery. Uganda is discovering more and more. Every time we are licensing, we are seriously planning to establish a refinery. We want to add value from Uganda, and that will create more industries that will see us have fertilizers, that will see us have support towards other sectors. So it is just a matter of time. It's a matter of time. Africa is waking up and we are moving systematically. Yes. We have the East African Power Pool. We are planning to trade. Seriously, we are planning to trade energy within our neighbors. It is a power pool comprising of 13 countries, and each one of us is determined to exploit the generation capacity that we have, so that we are trading big time.
I like that at the stage, almost all African ministers were in unison to say, this is the direction we're
And
taking.
African
This
presidents.
this is the demand that we
Yes.
have of you guys.
Yes.
This is what we expect of you to do, and these are our deliverables at this time.
Yes.
Nothing like what we've been hearing over the previous conference, especially from.
We are now coming out to speak on many controversial global issues. You will hear Africa speaking with one voice.
I'm very well represented, I can say for sure. Thank you so much.
You are welcome.
So there you have it, folks. The Berlin Energy Transition Dialogue BETD23 was an amazing opportunity for Africa to showcase her abilities in energy transition, the technologies we have in the renewable energy space. But for most, you'd say we did not live up to the billing. And, for the other part, you'd say that there was a showcase of hope, of knowledge, of know-how, of technocratism, basically something you'd expect of a transitioning continent. In most part, I was inspired by what I saw. I hope that your leaders were inspired as well, and that when we come back in March 2024, we will have at least a lot of learnings to share from our technologies on the continent. What I can say is the leaders that came to Berlin had knowledge on energy transition, they had knowledge on renewable space. The biggest challenge that I noticed was on the financing aspect, also on the technology, which we still have to rely almost entirely from the West and the Americas. But at least I can tell for a fact that a lot of developments are happening on the continent, most of which will catapult us to a fairly fighting ground, especially in countries that have waters, such as hydroelectricity generation, that have a lot of sun, like Uganda, that can catapult solar generation, that have a bit of uranium, that can increase significantly on spaces of nuclear. Of course, the purification will take a bit of technology and time, which we may have to wait a bit longer for. But there are other sources like thermal, which are easier to harness here, wind, which are also easier to harness here, that wouldn't have to cost us an arm and a leg and have us holding the begging bowels often every time we're meeting on the global stage. Thank you for listening to the Lastro podcast. You can follow all the events that happened in Berlin on our numerous social media channels, especially on TikTok, where we have lots of engagement on the conversations that went down in Berlin, on YouTube, on our website, lastropafrica.org. Thank you so much. Till next time, it's Alex Taremwa. Have a good night.